here we are. We're coming up on that sweet spot during the NBA season, almost the 30-game mark. We're almost at Christmas break, and I think this is a really sweet spot in the NBA season to where we could fairly evaluate a bunch of teams and see how the rest of their season is going to go. And I know we might have a few teams down the stretch of the season. There's always those one or two teams that surprise a lot of people and heat up and potentially make a playoff push when a lot of teams thought they were dead in the water. But nonetheless, a team that I've been paying close attention to really since the summertime, really since 3 summertimes ago, the Houston Rockets. And I think I've seen enough from them. I think I've seen enough games of substance. We've seen the Houston Rockets play on TV a few times this year. Some big time games so far for them. And watching them in these situations and watching all of their games in totality, I think I'm ready to say that not only are they one of the best teams in their conference, which is the Western Conference, but I'm a huge believer that the Houston Rockets are one of the best teams in the NBA. Now, the Houston Rockets, they haven't hit 30 games yet on the season, but they are getting close. They're 27 games into the year, and so far through those 27 games, they have a record of 18-9. They're sitting at third place in the Western Conference behind the Oklahoma City Thunder, who has a record of 21-5. And in second place, you have the Memphis Grizzlies, who have the same amount of losses as the Houston Rockets at 8, but they have one more win, so they get the nod for second place in the West. And if you a person like me, you look at the standings every day, the Houston Rockets, they've literally been switching back and forth the last couple of days with the Memphis Grizzlies for that number 2 spot. But nonetheless, my reason for considering the Houston Rockets for being one of the best teams in the NBA is because they're a very dominant basketball team, and they have a very unique, special way of dominating the game of basketball, at least by today's standard, because a lot of people, they look at the NBA with the way the three-point shot is going and how teams are shooting so many of them, and the best team in the NBA, the Boston Celtics, and I'm saying they're the best team because they won the championship last year, so I want to give them that respect. But sometimes they go out and they get up 50, 63. So a lot of people see this as a highly favored offensive lead. So that's why I'm calling what the Houston Rockets doing right now is very special, very unique, because they're dominating on the defensive side of the ball, and they're also dominating from a physicality standpoint. And when we look at the Houston Rockets, we look at them in these team statistical categories, and we look at them in a statistic like defensive rating. They're number 2 in the NBA, just by 2 points to the Oklahoma City Thunder when it comes to defensive rating. And also, they're the best rebounding team in all of the NBA. They're the number 1 team in total rebounds, and they're also number 1 in offensive rebounds. So that's why I'm such a huge believer in the Houston Rockets, and a lot of people forget those 2 aspects of basketball because of what we seeing on the offensive side of the ball. We seeing all these high number of points being scored per game, and a lot of people forget how important defense is and how important rebounding is. And if you've been watching the Houston Rockets, they've been able to dominate in these 2 facets of the game of basketball, and it's been leading to a lot of success for a young team with so much more potential than just dominating on the defensive and when it comes to a physicality standpoint. So that's why I think it's really so cool what the Houston Rockets are doing. And we can look at even more numbers that take it even further and show how the Houston Rockets are dominating out on the basketball court. And for the people that don't believe me when I say the Houston Rockets are dominating they're dominating with their physicality and their defensive prowess leading the way, one stat that we can look at that it will explain everything to us is simply we can look at the net rating. And that's just basically when we add up all of the Houston Rockets points and we add up all of their opponents' points, what is that number going to be when we subtract the opponent's points from the Houston Rockets? Now, when we factor in all of those games and we factor in wins and losses, the Houston Rockets are sitting at number 7 in all of the NBA with a net rating of 6.8. So we can round up to 7. So factoring in wins and losses, factor in all the points, the Houston Rockets are +7. And to compare it to the number 1 team in the NBA, which are the Oklahoma City Thunder, their net rating with all of those numbers factored in are number are at number 12. So the Oklahoma City Thunder are number 1 and the Houston Rockets are number 7, just to put those numbers into perspective for you guys. And also I looked it up with the Houston Rockets, what their net rating is when they're just winning games, and all of their wins, they're winning by an average margin of 13.6 points per game, which is very impressive. So when they're winning games, they're winning them in an impressive fashion, and when they're losing games, it's not by much. So this is a great thing for the Houston Rockets. And to take the net rating stat even a little bit further, and I hope I'm able to relay this to you guys correctly. But so when the Houston Rockets, when we rank all the top 10 teams in net rating, and we rank those teams against each other, and we rank those teams who has the best net rating against the top 10 teams in net rating, out of all those teams, the Houston Rockets, they rank 5th place in the NBA. So against the top 10 teams in the NBA in net rating, when they play each other, out of those 10 teams, the Houston Rockets, they're 5th best when it comes to net rating. So they've been able to have some dominating performances, not only just against some of the weaker teams in the NBA, but some of the better teams in the NBA as well. So all of these factors, this points to them being a serious team in the Western Conference, and also, like our original claim in the beginning of the video, that they're a dominating team, and they're dominating leading the way on the defensive side of the ball, and also from a physicality standpoint. And when we look at the Houston Rockets, we look at where it starts at with the head coach, Coach Ime Udoka. You go back to his debut coaching season with the Boston Celtics, they got off to a very slow start. I believe at one point in that season they were looking at the play-in tournament, and I can't remember, this was some time ago, but they either finished second in the Eastern Conference or third in the Eastern Conference, and they got all the way to the NBA Finals, and they had one of the more historic defenses. You can go back and look it up. It was so many historical things about that Boston Celtics team on the defensive side of the ball. So now the Houston Rockets, they have Coach Ime Udoka, and we know he's a defensive-minded head coach, and he knows all these different schemes, and it seems like he watches a lot of film, because we don't see the Houston Rockets, we don't see them run the same defensive scheme every game. It really depends on who they're playing, and then we go past the head coach and we look at the personnel that make up this team of the Houston Rockets, some of the great individual defenders that they have on this team, which is so many of them. And just to name them off really quickly, Dillon Brooks is a terrific individual NBA defender. Amen Thompson is terrific when it comes to guarding individually. Tari Eason, Jabari Smith Jr., Fred VanVleet. So they have all of these guys who are terrific at guarding individually. And with Coach Ime Udoka being a defensive-minded coach, he has also found ways for his offensively favorite players like Alperen Sengun, like Jalen Green. Statistically, you look at their numbers, they are playing so much better on the defensive side of the ball prior to when Coach Ime Udoka was not a part of the Houston Rockets. So he has the guys who's not known as defenders performing higher on the defensive side of the ball. And then also they just play really, I forgot about Tari Eason. Tari Eason is another great individual defender on the Houston Rockets. But we take all of these guys into account. Not only are they great individual defenders, but they're also great team defenders, which is why Coach Ime Udoka is able to run all of these different schemes that we see the Houston Rockets running. And one of my favorite performances that I watched the Houston Rockets, this was probably a little bit earlier in the NBA season. They were facing the Los Angeles Clippers, and they had Jabari Smith Jr. guarding Zubac and Dillon Brooks guarding James Harden that way. And this was at the time the Los Angeles Clippers, they were causing a lot of teams a lot of trouble with their two-man game between Zubac and James Harden. At the time, Zubac was looking like he might have been heading for an all-star season. And then they put they had Alperen Sengun guarding Derrick Jones Jr., who's not the greatest shooter in the world. And this right here, this is big time in so many different ways, and it causes so many different disruptions. We look at it initially when they try to run that two-man game with Zubac and James Harden. Now they have Dillon Brooks and Jabari Smith Jr. switching that, and it's obvious that Coach Ime Udoka, he's comfortable with Dillon Brooks switching on to Ivica Zubac in a one-on-one matchup because Dillon Brooks, he's a very physical defender, and he doesn't mind matching up against anybody out on the basketball court. And then Jabari Smith Jr., he's the same height as a lot of bigs in the NBA, but he has that ability to guard out on the perimeter. So they're able to get a favorable switch initially off the pick and roll, and then also it just causes when the Houston Rockets, when they try to pick on somebody else on the court with a screen, it's not the same. They're not getting that same impact as when it's Zubac setting the screen, because he's one of the best screen setters in the NBA. And then also Zubac isn't a floor spacer, so now you're making him kind of just stand in that dunker position, not moving around on the basketball court. So that's one move that I love. That's one example. That's one great example of how the Houston Rockets show how versatile they are on the defensive side of the ball. But there's so many brilliant schemes like that causes a lot of havoc. And the Houston Rockets, their main goal, what they want you to do, they want you to play one-on-one basketball against their best defenders on the team, because they feel like 99% of the guys in the NBA can't consistently beat our guys one-on-one. So it's really fun watching these guys get after it on the defensive side of the ball, because they have so many athletes on this team, and that good defense, that good rebounding, it leads to a lot of transition opportunities where they have some of the most fun players to watch get out in transition. We look at guys like Jalen Green, we look at Tari Eason, we look at Amen Thompson. All of these guys, are Cam Whitmore whenever he's getting some burn. All of these guys are very capable of doing something special when they get out in transition and see that open court. So I'm really loving the way that the Houston Rockets are defending on the defensive side of the ball, and I think a lot of people try to make their offense out a lot worse than it really is. Like when they were in the semifinals of the in-season tournament, Bob Myers, I felt like he was a little harsh on them on the offensive side of the ball. Given where they at, I think they're like I want to say they're top 15 in the NBA in points per game, and they're like 16th in the NBA when it comes to offensive rating. So they're right in the middle of the pack. But I think for a team that's performing like they are on the defensive side of the ball, I think it's fairly impressive that they're in the middle of the pack right now. But I just think that the Houston Rockets, they have so much potential on the offensive side of the ball, and I'm really confident at one point in this season. We saw a flash of it in their most recent win against the New Orleans Pelicans. They knocked down 17 threes, but I'm very confident that this team definitely has another gear that they can get to, that they could get higher to on the offensive side of the ball. So that's why I'm really excited to watch the Houston Rockets down the stretch of the season, because they have young players, and usually young players, at any given moment, we can see them hit like some crazy type of stride where they become different basketball players by raising their level of play. So I think the Houston Rockets down the stretch of this season, they're definitely going to be worth watching, and they're definitely going to be intriguing. But that's what I want to talk about with you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment down below how you feel about the Houston Rockets defense, and then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man, and that's curtains.